Hola a todos, soy Pamela de Asian Boss. Probablemente la mayoría de ustedes están al tanto del tiroteo ocurrido en Atlanta, en Estados Unidos, el cual acabó con la vida de 6 asiáticas de ascendencia coreana. Creemos que es bastante importante discutir sobre los crímenes de odio contra los asiáticos en Estados Unidos, especialmente por los medios de comunicación oficiales. Nosotros, como un medio pequeño, lo único que podemos hacer es intentar que las voces de la comunidad afectada sean escuchadas. El día de hoy fuimos a hablar con un grupo de coreanos estadounidenses, los cuales están viviendo en Corea actualmente, para conocer sus experiencias viviendo en Estados Unidos y si les sorprende esta noticia. Veamos lo que nos dijeron.
So, where are you from in the States, and why did you leave the US and come to Korea?
So I'm from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and I left about a year ago. I got to Korea because my family actually lives here, and when COVID kind of hit America, I realized that people were not going to start wearing masks and that it was going to get really bad, and I actually experienced a little bit of discrimination during that time, so I was like, man, it might be just better for me to get out of here.
So I'm from Anaheim Hills, California. It's a very small suburb located near Disneyland. And then in high school, I went to high school in Virginia and then college in Arizona. So I lived in places where you didn't have a lot of Koreans, and I would say the reason I left America is just because I wanted to find myself, and I was kind of sick of not just being a minority, but kind of feeling like I didn't have a voice.
I am based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I just came out here to ride out the pandemic. Things were getting really bad. We were going in for multiple lockdowns by the time I came out here, and I just came to visit family for an extended period of time.
I grew up in New York City, lived in Seattle for 20 plus years. I've been really involved in the nonprofit community. And so the spike in hate crimes, especially what's happened in Atlanta, has been incredibly devastating for not just me, but a lot of my friends back home.
And why did you decide to leave the US and come to Korea?
It's just a couple of reasons. One is the pandemic, and the US was just not handling the pandemic well at all. And the fear of getting infected, the fear of anti-maskers and people that and then the violence, right? And that, not to the level that we've seen lately, but definitely I've seen, a lot of my friends in Southeast Seattle where I live, getting harassed by people on the train, on the bus, elders getting shoved. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to come back to the place where I was born and get away from the US for a bit.
So let's talk about the latest tragedy which happened in Atlanta. What was your initial reaction to that?
I was absolutely devastated, but just the level of hate and the spike, I think the New York City Police Department said that it's a 1,900% increase in Asian hate crimes from last year to this year. So I'm not surprised, but I am horrified.
I was very, very shocked because up until this point, I hadn't heard of any murders or any shootings of Asian Americans. And I have a lot of family in Atlanta, so it kind of made me think, what if one of my family members was killed or assaulted? And I just can't imagine what a lot of the families are going through. It just felt like the whole Asian American community was attacked instead of just another hate crime. It hit more at home because of my Asian heritage.
My initial reaction was, frankly, it was this resignment where I read about it and I thought it was only a matter of time, is what I thought. And I just felt very deflated. I felt so beaten up when I read this news. I thought, wow, I knew this was coming.
One of the mothers that were killed, they created a GoFundMe for the kids, and then it's just really heartbreaking because, growing up with a single mother, and then now that single mother is killed, and it's 2 young kids that have to basically, live on their own without any parental guidance. And then, luckily, the GoFundMe, I'm sure, will help them a lot financially. But just to see that kind of tragedy happen to young children is really sad, I would say.
When the police officer came out and he said that it was just a bad day, that kind of made me angry. And not only me, it made my friends angry. It made people just connected together with the Asian American community angry. Because it's a hate crime, no matter how you look at it.
I was pretty horrified to read the police's response about him, the perpetrator having a bad day, trying to dismiss it as something that's not a hate crime, even though clearly he had acted upon a preconceived notion that Asian women run a massage parlor and had targeted that place.
This wasn't an isolated incident for Asian people. Asian elderly people, females have been targeted too. Why is this happening all right now?
I do have an idea that when Donald Trump was the president and he spun very toxic rhetoric about the coronavirus being China virus, that sort of emboldened people who are already leaning on racist ideas to take violent action against people of color. And I think because of the rhetoric that the coronavirus is a China virus, Asian people were targeted unfairly.
This pandemic has really shaken up America economically and mentally and emotionally, and I know people are stressed out, and I know when there's a crisis, we naturally want to blame someone or we want to have a cause. And so to me, it makes sense that in America, there are some people who would just naturally, under stress, want to say, this has wrecked my life, my job, my family, my school, my home. Let's put it on the Asians.
I think there's a certain narrative out there that the virus is, an Asian thing, and there's a lot of people who are stressed out, cooped up at home, having difficult times economically, so they're possibly looking for somebody to blame. Asians, we could take advantage of them in the workplace, on the street. We can make fun of them in school. I feel like I experienced it myself.
I think it's partly because a lot of people in the States view Asians as meek, maybe soft and easy to walk over because, the stereotype is that we're polite, we're the model minority. So I think when these racists see those targets, they say, somebody I can attack without a fear of a consequence, a vulnerable minority that maybe most of the media still doesn't care about, in my opinion. And I think they just made the perfect targets for these attacks.
So, how was your time in the U.S.? Have you been in subject of racism?
I immigrated in 1976. I was 3 years old. And I remember growing through up in the 70s and 80s in New York and New Jersey and getting a lot of Asian hate in terms of the C word. I don't know if I can curse here, but being called chink or gook. Before this period of history, I think a lot of the stuff I got was a lot more what we call microaggressions. Hey, your English is really good, or where are you from? And it's I grew up in New York. And it's no, but where are you from? What part of New York? It's stuff like that, or hey, do you know Kung Fu? Or can you help me with my math homework?
I grew up in a very small town in the Midwest of the US, and as a child and as a kid and as a teen, there were lots of racial comments, usually that I was Chinese, and someone telling me I'm Chinese, which was always very ironic to me because I'm not. There's one in particular that I remember. There was a classmate in grade school, and he always used to have baseball hats, and he always used to tell me that I'm the only one in the classroom who can't have one because my face is flat. And he would always say, you're Chinese, your face is flat, you're Chinese. And they would make, he would make, the gestures about my eyes. Then as an adult, I lived in much bigger cities in the US, and I experienced lots of racism there. But the difference from when I was a kid was now I was an adult in a big urban city, and I was experiencing racism with my employers, with my coworkers, and with my bosses.
I've actually know and heard of 2 people who are within my network, not my friends, but my friends' friends, who have been assaulted, and none of those crimes were reported in the media, and I thought it was a big issue. I wanted to tell my friends, don't walk around alone. They're actually attacking people in these towns where a lot of Koreans live in the community, and a group of them are jumping people, saying thanks for bringing Corona, and sending these kids to the hospital.
So, how do you respond when you encounter racism? What's the best thing to do?
And I think society just kind of taught us to really stay silent about it. I don't really know exactly how I would respond, but if anyone around me, such as my siblings, my family members ever went through it, I mean, I would do anything to just explain the situation, to really help them to understand, like, this is just not right. Like, this is not a joke anymore. Like, these are human lives, these are human emotions, people's feelings, and their identities are being destroyed just through these actions and through these mindsets. So, yeah.
If someone's being violent towards you, it's hard to meet that violence with kindness and love, right? You can't like hug. You can't hug someone trying to punch you, right? It's very difficult to do that. Meeting that person with the same ignorance and violence is not going to change that person's perspective about me. So I know that's not the correct thing to do, but of course, you know, my natural reaction is anger. But you know, at my age now, I'll try to be understanding to the person. But there's always a line you can't cross where if it turns physical, then you know, there's only so much you can do. If it turns physical or my life's in danger, of course I'm going to defend myself as best as I can.
There was a time in my life, even just a few years ago, especially if it's happening in a workplace or with a boss, where I would be much more resigned and I'd be like, there's nothing I can do. But then I realized that because so many of us take that approach, that's why nothing changes. And so after some experiences in Chicago, I realized it doesn't serve anyone to be silent about it. So if something happened to me today in the United States, I would be saying a lot of things.
Yeah, when I'm confronted with racism, there's a lot of different options I take, right? Sometimes it's to ignore it. Am I going to put myself in danger, etc. if I like confront it? But a lot of times if I confront it, it's really about, hey, you said this thing, and can you tell me why you said it? I've done this a dozen times, but each time I do it, your heart rate gets up, right? You feel like sweaty, you feel anxious because you don't want to confront people and you don't know what the reactions are going to be. But it's usually about, like, I try to ask, like, hey, what did you mean when you said this? And keep it within, like, the things that they said and not assume what they said.
When I was younger, I would just laugh it off and maybe even trade a joke of my own to somebody and say something not too mean, but, you know, try to go a little back and forth. But now, as I've gotten older and experienced more things and seen what's going on, all you can really do is just either walk away or try to engage the person in a conversation and try to maybe educate them, but that doesn't always turn out so well. I think the best thing to do is maybe after the situation cools down and you have some time, if you have the opportunity to speak with that certain person again, is to let them know on an intimate level that what they said really hurt you and why these things aren't okay to say. I think words really do matter. Growing up, I didn't think I would be so impacted by all the racism and aggression I experienced, but I realize now as an adult it's really traumatized me in a way, and it's affected who I am and also affected my life decisions and what I want to become.
Can you see yourself going back to the United States in the near future?
I'm a little scared, but yeah, a lot of my friends are asking why I want to come back so soon because of the violence. And I'm not going to lie, I'm nervous to go back because at the start of the pandemic, I was also subject to an assault incident. I was actually driving and I was coming to a stop at a four-way stop. And this guy didn't stop, but he slowed down, he rolled down his windows and he spat in my direction, like onto my car. And it was a really hot day and I'm just really glad I didn't have my windows rolled down, but that was really shocking, you know. And another time I had witnessed someone being attacked like from afar. I wasn't nearly close enough to do anything about it. And a bunch of people rallied around that person, but I had seen that all at the onset of the first lockdown in the Bay Area. So yeah, when I read about these incidences in the news, so often it doesn't make me feel that great about going back home.
Man, that's a hard question. Yes, but if I'm being honest, like the stuff that's going on recently that I see does play into my decisions sometimes, but it's not the determining factor because I live in America most of my life, so I still don't look at it as like a place where Asian people can't live, but I definitely gonna be more cautious when I go back, more than I was before I moved to Korea.
I will go back to America someday, sooner probably than later. And I feel like if I do go back, now would actually be a better time. Now would be a better time because now is the time where Asian Americans are starting to voice their opinion, and I can become a part of that movement. And also not only that, but because they're voicing their opinion, I feel like people would be open to treating us better, now that they know of the problem in itself.
What do you think is the best way to address this? How can things get better?
I think America and the media, they're doing a great job. I think everyone's doing a really great job. People are like having interviews like this or using their platform, social media. Celebrities are doing all this to spread awareness. And I think just more and more of this publicity, people really sharing about it, putting it on the news, not really putting it under the covers like it was before, but addressing that Asian hate crime is an actual serious issue. I think that will really help change the mindset of a lot of people.
At the end of the day, like overall, I don't think violence is the answer to solve any problem in this world right now. We really gotta come together and try to just do better. I think that there's just got to be progress. First, we're addressing the issue at hand, doing interviews like this, and then second, I think organizing talented, respectful people to use their platform to spread the awareness, educate younger kids.
Yeah, I would talk about, even from the beginning when Asian Americans first came to the United States, they were brought in as cheap labor, they were used to break unions, they were given really harsh immigration laws so that only specific people can come. Just like all the Chinese workers that came and built the railroads, which is like a huge part of America's infrastructure and the ability to like build their economy, they weren't allowed to bring their wives over, right? And when they were finished with the railroad, the only jobs they were given were what they thought was feminine jobs, washing dishes, cooking, cleaning laundry. And so even from then, the way the Japanese Americans have been treated with World War II and been put in concentration camps just because of their heritage. There's a long history, the Page Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act. There's all these things in United States history, policy, that has been built to like denigrate Asian Americans, Asians. And so I would say, hey, look at the history. Let's talk about what's happened. And then these are actually like long-term policies that have been around for a long time. And this is not just a new thing.
The other thing is to just do what you can in terms of taking action, whether it be, grabbing a coffee with somebody who you recently spoke with, who doesn't understand it, and who denies its existence, whether it's trying to engage that person or whether you're giving your time and volunteering to efforts that are doing community outreach or serving a portion of the population that really needs help, or donating your money and posting about it on social media and spreading the word. There are a lot of different things that we can do to address the issue.